Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Noah.
And my name is Chatawanze. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes, you're admittedly having a way better day than I am.
What's happened?
With total disregard, having total disregard for my age, I went to play very competitive rounds of football with people in their 30s and 20s.
Oh, you've forgotten where you are. Nah, I learned to respect myself in that respect years ago. I think it's a story worth telling, possibly. So this was in 2009, so 16 years ago. I had
Mhm.
just moved back. So I was in my very late 20s at the time, but I had just moved back to Nigeria from the UK. And I went to spend a week with my parents in Benin before going back to going to Abuja, as it were, then to start work. And there were some young men, on average about 10 years younger than me. They were kids when I was growing up. So they were playing football not too far from there was this big field near my dad's compound back then. So I went to play with them. And now I had a reputation when I was growing up. Well, they used to call me bulldozer. Because I was a sort of uncompromising defender. I mean, my childhood hero as a defender was Gaetano Shiria. So I had this thing of, if you miss the ball, don't miss the leg. I had that saying. So they used to call me bulldozer. So these guys I could see when they were choosing, bulldozer won't follow us play, bulldozer won't follow us play. And I was picked very quickly. And when the game started, I could see the guy because I was in the third position, so I was opposite their seven. And the ball came to him. And I could see some sort of terror in his eyes, expecting to get his leg broken. But the way the guy beats me, very comprehensive, as in he went past me in a flash. I couldn't keep up. And then suddenly after that, everybody, it was all across the floor. Once they got the ball, they came towards me as in, we in the game, I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Please, can you guys substitute me? So I learned a very important lesson that day. Football is a young man's game. I mean, I wasn't yet 30 then. It was a year before I turned 30. But even at that time, I mean, these guys were 18, 19, 20-year-olds. And after that, I just started respecting myself, and until I finally stopped playing football, maybe about 6 years ago. Um, I would only play with my age mates. The reason I finally stopped was myself and some friends. We used to go to stadium in Lagos every Saturday morning to go and play. But we quickly noticed that we were wasting our time because we'll go and play in the morning, all right. But then, the way stadium is, there are all
Yep.
these clubs, pubs around. So we would play in the morning, and then from there, all of us would migrate and stay in OGs specifically
Ah,
up until evening, watching Premiership football. So all the calories we had
and having
lost
a
in the
few bowls
morning,
of pepper soup
pepper soup,
and
beer,
beer to
everything.
boot.
So all the calories that we had burnt in the morning, we had put them and more right back. So at a point, one guy was like, his wife pointed out to him the ridiculousness of what we were doing. And that was how the whole thing just gradually faded away.
Oh, wow. Well, it's quite interesting. Well, it was fun. Although now, as we say in Nigeria, my body did tell me. But from the football field and playing with people half your age to another arena, the political arena, where we're talking about people not yet born. We have Liz Truss trying very, very hard, I must say, to be relevant. Having seen the right wing train leave without her on board, she's been in the UK, she's been in the US, she's tried everything to be top of the news agenda, and now she's rehashing an age-old trope, as it were, saying we do need to have more. Oh, well, not we. A certain portion of the population need to have more children in order to crowd out her, let's put it that way, in order to crowd out people like us. Cheta, what's this video you sent me, and why on earth did you try to spoil my weekend with a video of Liz Truss?
For a start, I sent it on Thursday. So if your weekend started on Thursday, come and employ me. So it was an interview that Liz Truss had with the American right-wing pundit Ben Shapiro. And basically it was one of those things where she's she cuts a rather pathetic figure, unfortunately, especially when you consider that she used to be the Prime Minister of the UK. But she really messed up her period as Prime Minister, has not done very well. And as a result, she's trying very hard um, to gain some sort of relevance within within right wing circles. She turns up at their events, especially in the United States. Um, then she's on TV a lot, saying a lot of stuff. Now, what's caught my attention was hearing someone who had been Prime Minister of the United Kingdom basically talking about immigration and all of that, and then ending up by saying that, oh, British people, which is a code word for white people, have to have more babies. And the first thing that came to my head was, well, you could start from yourself. You have just two. So it could, so I mean, two babies is below replacement level. So for those who may not understand, replacement level in demographics is 2.1 children per woman. What that means is that if you have a population of 10 million people as a country, every woman has to have an average of 2.1 children in order for the population to remain stable. Um, so this is, of course, it means that for every 10 women, there should be 21 children. That's just what it means. So there will be that extra woman who would have 3 children while the others have 2. So if the UK just wants to maintain its population, or if Liz Truss wants the UK to just maintain its population, why can't she volunteer to be that woman, that 10th woman that has a third child? I mean, um, I don't think that she's past childbearing age. Having said that, the point is, it's a code word for saying we don't want other people. We don't want black and brown people. We want our people to have more children. Um, so which puts her squarely in the same WhatsApp group with the likes of Viktor Orban, the leader of Hungary, who has been very, very clear in saying that in trying to incentivize Hungarian women to have more children rather than Hungary taking in immigrants. So the key thing that all of these conversations ignore is the structure of the economy. The structure of the economy, especially in the developed world. The days when you used to have um, 6 children, 7 children, 8 children, or in the case of one of my grandmothers, 10 children per woman, those days are gone. And that's because you no longer you no longer have subsistence kind of lifestyle. Children are no longer needed in the farm to produce food for the family. If you have children, you need to raise them, as we are both finding out. You need to raise them to a certain standard. And raising them to that kind of standard is very expensive. If I'm to Nigerianize this a little, I would say when you consider one of the root causes of corruption is because many of our leaders, and especially in the northern part of our country, tend to have many, many children. So you have a situation where a former Chief Justice of Nigeria under Buhari, his name skips me right now. He was rumored to have 37 children. Some people said as many as 40. Now, all of those children had to go to or were going to very expensive schools. Let's just assume for sake of argument, 30 of them. On a judge's salary, how was he going to do that? So when you have such a scenario, that opens the latitude for things like the corruption that we talk about a lot. I know I'm moving away
Yeah,
a bit here. The point I'm just trying to make is that a modern economic structure no longer supports large families. So people need to get with the program. Now, the real issue in the Western sense that people like Liz Truss and the rest of them are ignoring is the fact that the welfare state that they have was designed at a point in time when the average life expectancy in the UK, for example, was in its 50s. Now the average life expectancy is for men, I think, is 78. For women, is 83. And then you are having falling birth rates. I think the UK's birth rate is about 1.6, 1.7. So there are fewer people to support an increasing aging population. Retirement age has been at 65 or thereabouts since the 1950s. So there's a need to have those painful conversations, A, about raising the retirement age, and B, and this is, to traditional labor people like you, this won't sound very nice, but there's a need to have a conversation about what's part of the welfare state to cut down on.
And that's no, that's actually quite an interesting conversation and interesting point. And also, of course, you would have seen that there was the brouhaha over the welfare reform or attempted welfare reform recently. But the other thing that you also didn't mention, which is quite pertinent to note, is that there's, for whatever reason, there's an increase in cases of children with special needs, which also need to be taken care of by the state. And until there's a real understanding of what is causing this, um, there's definitely going to be that need by the state to take care, and of course the state should take care of these children. So it's not looking at all these factors in life expectancy, the fact that over 70% of local authorities spend their money on adult social care, and then of course there's more people going into the welfare state, and of course there's also an increase in the rate of special needs amongst children that the state doesn't seem to have a grip on, because there are a lot of local authorities grappling with this. And when you put all this together, the state really ideally should have higher priorities. However, when you also look at this doesn't look anything like anything other than just that racism, but of course couched perfectly, or couched in a way that only the people that is directed at the dog whistle. Because when you look
That's
at
the word, dog whistle.
yeah, when you look at the stats, for instance, as of 2023, 6% of births in the UK were to white British. You had about 6% of that being to black to the black ethnic group. You had mixed at 9%. You had Asians at 15%. You had other white at 11%. So now, if you look at if you look at white as an ethnic group on its own, you had 67% of birth rates as going to the white ethnic population. So the question then is, if this is already there, yes, generally and globally as well, there's a decline in birth rates. But if you already have more people within your ethnic demographic outbirthing others, why is this such a problem? Or is it again in a bid to whip up racial tension, which they would like to say, oh no, it's not. However, if you have your grouping, as it were, outbirthing others to a factor of 3 to 1, why is this such a problem? Are you telling people to give more, give birth a lot more?
So my own answer to that is there are people who definitely, let's not be naive, there are people within the system who from the blast of the whistle, it's all about race to them. Then there are people who are unscrupulous politicians, and in this group I would place your favorite politician, Nigel Farage, who may not, I'm not going to say that he's not a racist, but in my opinion, I don't think it's the race thing that motivates him. Nigel Farage just wants power. And if racism will be a vehicle to get power, then so be it. That's where I would place him. Then there's a third category, people like, and this is where Liz Truss falls into, people who go along with the flow and don't want to take any responsibility, but they want to be relevant. That's her problem. She wants to be relevant, but she doesn't want to take responsibility for the disaster that was her government. So you find her using tropes such as the deep state, all of that. Hello, you were the prime minister and you were in government for years before you became prime minister. Um, then you have the fourth category, which is the general crowd. So the key thing for me, the key question is, like we discussed a couple of episodes ago, it's mainly about the economy and people who want to maintain their positions of power and influence and realize, in a manner of speaking, that they have to whip up some sentiments in order to create misdirection. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Misdirection. So what we are seeing is a huge is just a huge effort at misdirection. Oh, we failed in uplifting your standards. Brexit has been a total mess. It's been a huge failure. It's blame the of course Brexit was about blaming European immigrants. Um Brexit happens. European immigrants disappeared or reduced in number because the Ukraine war essentially meant that more European immigrants came from Ukraine specifically. But in between the Brexit and that, suddenly they started saying, quote and unquote, the wrong kind of immigrants showing up, the black and brown people. So they didn't get the kind of Brexit that they wanted. And I think it's important to note one of the reasons why I put Liz Truss firmly in the camp of people who go along with the flow is that don't forget that Liz Truss was anti-Brexit before Brexit happened. Now suddenly she has swung over very very hard to the other side of the argument. So it's, for me, if I were,
Didn't she start as a Lib Dem?
yeah, she started as a Lib Dem. But I mean, no, you have to. One thing that I would say is that I don't hold it against people positions that they held 20, 30 years ago. You have to give space for evolution. But for this particular one, for the Brexit position, especially now that it is so obvious that Brexit has been a disaster for the UK, um, it's clear that she did not come about her current position as a result of any serious thoughts. She's pandering to a crowd. And unfortunately, the end result of the games that particular crowd is playing, usually, historically, has always been disaster.
To be honest, I don't know who takes Liz Truss seriously. I don't even think Liz Truss takes Liz Truss seriously. And if you read,
I think we have to push back on that. People take her seriously. She wouldn't be on Ben Shapiro if people didn't take her seriously.
look, and you should know this, Cheta. Again, with the thing, in the world of PR, with the right phone calls and all that, you can be on any show. I don't think, and I'll really stand to be corrected, but I don't think you would have a Liz Truss show up at some conference and people are thinking, oh my goodness, this is a must listen. In her fringe of the political spectrum, there are people that are taken seriously. People like Farage, sad, to the detriment of a lot of the UK, really. But on the right wing, even what was his name? The chair of reform. I don't remember his name anymore. Or if Tice, okay, no, former chair, Tice, who would be taken seriously. But Truss, I would stand to be corrected to see that people are flocking to listen to what Liz Truss is trying to say.
Well, she's spoken at since she left power. She's spoken at the Conservative Party conference. She's spoken at the Institute for Government. She's spoken at the American Republican events. So those are serious events. You may not like their politics, but people take them seriously, and I think that's something that a lot of liberals, such as you, that tends to underestimate the seriousness with which it's similar to, and forgive me for going back home again. It's similar to the kind of things that a lot of the quote unquote good guys in Nigerian politics. They're online making a lot of noise and saying, nobody does this. Whereas the so-called bad guys, many of whom are in the APC, are actually on the ground. So look at, for example, the by-elections that happened this weekend back in Nigeria. If you had gone solely with what is being said online, you would think that the APC would have gotten a pasting. But no, the APC came out of it the big winner. So let's not fall into that trap.
Oh
People
no,
take
no,
people like Liz Truss
no, no.
seriously.
See, Cheta, I'm not again. Yeah, I'm not saying don't listen to her or oh my goodness she's good. No, I'm saying in the realm of at least when you think of shaping far right politics, there are other there are politicians who, if they speak, people again, I would name people like Farage. I would say Tice. I would look at even Low, for instance, would make a lot. It makes a lot more impact when they speak than Trust. Trust,
I was
understandably,
reacting to
yeah,
your words. Your
yeah,
words were nobody takes Liz Truss
yeah,
seriously.
no,
So
yeah,
that's what.
yeah,
So
but she a lot of what she
forgive
does
me
is
for
in
being
America.
pedantic.
Yeah, but a lot of what she does is in America.
And
Americans are not voting in UK
yes, and
election.
with the exception of Jeremy Corbyn and his menagerie, the British political establishment takes America very seriously. If Trump is to wake up tomorrow and start pushing Liz Truss, Stammer will invite her for a meeting.
I think this is one on again not so rare cases where we'll agree to disagree. But
The
anyway,
British political establishment of which you're a part of is very much enthralled to their American overlords.
No, I'm not. Again, remember, I'm not saying
Trump pushes Liz Truss, she will be taken seriously here.
Again, and I think you're making my point, which is what she's been trying to do to get that recognition there, so that at least she'll be taken seriously
I rest
here.
my case.
She's not taking seriously. She's not taking seriously back home. So she has to play this game to the American audience, so that hopefully someone would say, "Look."
So don't you think it's a very so you may not like it, but it's a very interesting strategy.
No, it's not about me liking it, but I'm just saying she's been at it for so long, it's not worked.
It's not that long, to be honest.
How long ago was she prime
It's
minister?
just a couple of years.
Uh-huh.
When you say so long, so long is 10, 15 years ago.
No, when you think about in those couple of years ago when she was prime minister, she's done the conferences. However, her other counterparts
that she was
are not doing as much conferences and are being taken seriously here.
Who? David Cameron?
No. Who else talks? Who else has played the American circuit? Again, go back to people like Farage.
See, normally when I would say that on the right, the former prime ministers of the UK who have found their way back into public life is John Major. Rishi Sunak has been taken extremely seriously by Goldman Sachs. Boris Johnson is being taken seriously by the people he writes for, because at the end of the day, Boris Johnson is a very good writer, whatever you think of him.
Even if he makes up his facts, but
it's a very so whether he makes up his facts or not, he's a very good fiction writer. Does that sound better?
Fiction, yes.
So I would concede yes, former prime ministers are taking a lot more seriously than Liz Truss. So yes, I'll raise my hand and concede to you.
Well, thank you. On that concessionary note, let's go on a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about other interesting matters. We'll talk about the labor market volatility and the rumblings in the criminal justice system. So see you soon. Welcome back to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
All right, Cheta. So loosely tied to the issue we're talking about in the first half of this show, which was Liz Truss and her call for more British people, which, as we've established, is the code word for more white people to have babies, is the news that came out last week that the Home Secretary was in favor of police releasing details about the ethnicity and immigration status of people who have been suspected to have committed crimes. Up until now, these sets of data would not have been released because they weren't deemed to have been appropriate in solving or in investigations of an alleged crime. However, um, last week we woke up to the news that this was now being seriously considered, and I wonder if this is a case of politics dictating what should be just common sense.
Well, from my point of view, on the surface at least, it sounds like common sense. And it sounds like common sense when you consider the recent history. Remember the Southport thing that happened last year? So some idiots walked into a children's play center and stabbed three girls and their teacher, and it ended up triggering riots across the UK, across England, um, because the rumors went around very quickly that it was a Muslim immigrant. Eventually, um, it emerged that the man was actually a Christian, black, of African ethnicity, but who was born in the UK. Um, so if that had been known earlier, it would probably have um, saved a lot of trouble because the reaction may have been different. Yes, it would have still been an immigrant or the child of immigrants, because again, he was born in the UK. So it would have been a child of immigrants, but so not a native as it were. But nevertheless, it would have taken some of the edge off conversations, because remember that mosques were attacked and all of that thing that happens with racists call to arms. Now, juxtapose it with what happened at Liverpool at the end of May, when during the Liverpool Trophy Parade, when some idiots drove his car into a crowd, and very quickly, Merseyside police really, released the fact that they had arrested a an adult white male in his 50s, because there was already some rumbling that it was a Muslim. There was some rumbling on right-wing social media. I think it was Radio Genoa or Visigrad 24 that had already claimed that it was a Muslim that had done it. So the fact that the Merseyside police acted very proactively helped douse that flame. So I understand Yvette Cooper's reasoning in that respect. It can be taken that she was pandering to the right wing. So it brings up a real question of transparency versus stigma, and systemic bias, and even questions of public trust. You have to ask, is her push for transparency it's a question you have already asked. Is it a political move to preempt far-right narratives, or is it a genuine effort to rebuild trust? I think that it's more of to preempt far-right narratives, because the building trust, I've said, I tend to be cynical about people. I think that the building trust thing will only happen when the economy begins to get better, not a moment before. So any attempt, or if we were to paraphrase Abacha, any attempt or group of attempted attempts to rebuild trust without rebuilding people's pockets will be met with failure. But at the very least, these political moves will help to preempt far-right narratives. If every time something major happens and immediately people know that, okay, it's a white British person, I think importantly, because like I've said, at least on 3 episodes now, the current boogeyman among the far right are Muslims. So if we know that it is not a Muslim that's committed a crime, it will help to dust the tension. But you now have to consider within the parameters of systemic bias or systemic racism in policing in the UK. So when you consider that Black people are more than 4 times more likely to be stopped and searched by white people, or that Black men are about 2.5 times more likely to be arrested than a white man, then you ask the question: if this data being released over time shows that, oh, okay, more white people are involved in all sorts of nefarious activities, will it have an effect on these arrest rates? And my answer to that is, I'm not sure it will. Um, the thing about bias is, bias tends to be inherent. Um, so what it will do is it will highlight these systemic issues. This is a conversation this particular question is a question that can only be answered in about 10 years' time. When we see data that shows, okay, we are having more arrests of so and so group of people, but in reality, these are people who so and so group of people are people who commit more crime. And let's bring it back to something that I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, because I think that's data point was one that struck me very, very very, very hard. You have 16% of the population of the UK as foreign born, but 8% of the population of the prison population, the population of people in prison, are foreign born, which means that what that says is that foreign born people are more than likely to keep to the rules. But nobody ever says this.
And that, I think, Chita, is where you hit the nail on the head. It's, again, as with a lot of these things, it's politics fueled by not just far right hatred, but also the media refusing to see, guys, this is the fact. Because if you look at just the numbers alone, on all metrics, whether it's population, or whether it's arrests, convictions, social remands, social sentences, or even prison populations, the white population far outpaces the rest of the population, by over, I mean, the least there is 57%, or no, 49%, which is the prison population. And which is also quite interesting, because if you look at, say, arrests, for instance, you have 7% of arrests are Asian. This as at 2022 anyway data. 15% are Black, but then it's 69% white. But then when you look at the prison population, you have 5% Asian, 30% Black, 49% white. You have these data that people are privy to, that people can always look back on, that people can always look at and say, you know what, hang on, what the media is saying, what the Reform and Farage and the rest are saying, it's just simply not true. However, the voice of the mind of, I'll say, the loudest voice in the room, which often tends to misrepresent the data, is taken as fact and is now leading to just causing disruption. And we have a situation now where, against recent guidelines, and of course, guidelines are never sacrosanct, they can be reviewed. You're now having a position where the police is saying, you know what, we're probably going to start releasing not just the ethnicity, but also the immigration status. Now, this again is the part that I am just stumped by. It's not just the ethnicity, but you also want to release the immigration status, because someone has said a lot of these crimes, or all these crimes, are committed by foreign migrants. I don't know, it beggars the question: who will stand up and actually just say, look, guys, this is what the facts are, this is what the truth is, and stick to their gun, rather than try to play to the gallery?
So again, we must make it very clear again that they are pandering to this politics that is being played. But I think I've made that very clear in not so many words. I think that this particular politics could be to our benefit. Unfortunately, it's a long waiting game. because it's in maybe 5 to 10 years that people will see the disparities. At the end of the day, this is something that is always going to happen everywhere. In any population, the people who are more likely to break the rules are or bend the rules are native born people. But the narratives of the far right tend to make it seem like, oh, the native born people here are just sitting innocently and these foreign criminals, which is the kind of stereotyping that has always led to disaster throughout history. Um, Again, obeying Gordon's law, we go straight to the Nazis. The Nazis stereotyped the Jews like, oh, these are the people who are committing all the crimes in our country, whereas that was plainly not true. When Hitler had the Reichstag steps set on fire, it was people like Fromm that went to do the dirty job, but it was Jews that were blamed. So that is so I want to look at this from a positive viewpoint, but it's positive if and only if there will be people within the political class in this country looking at you again who are bold enough, who are brave enough to look at the data when it's published and say, but hang on, this is what the actual data is saying. Because if they start publishing this data, but don't are not bold enough to say this is what the data is saying, are not bold enough to call it out, then everybody would be wasting time. So that's it. I think I'm of the opinion that more transparency is always a good thing. But what you use that transparency for, that's where the issue comes into play.
In other words, let's wait and see.
Yes, it's one of those things that's the only thing we can do is wait and see.
Hmm. And Chita, finally, you wanted to talk about the labor market and how this ties into all we've been saying. So I'm gonna not so expertly, seeing how I fared over the weekend, pass the ball over to you.
I mean, so the bottom line is I think one thing that we can agree with the far right and whoever is that
Oh my goodness. So I'd like to hear.
the majority of people who move because for economic reasons. End of story. It's a fact. It's not something we should shy away from. What we should point out in response to that is that people have always moved throughout history. The people who went to colonize America moved for economic reasons. The Hottentots from France who moved to whether it was to Germany or to Britain or to the US moved because of A, persecution, B, economic reasons. People will always move. It's something that you can't run away from. Fortunately, for those who are moving at around this time, it looks like the UK employment market has come into a bit of a crunch. Payrolled employees in the UK, for example, fell by 135,000 in the year between May 2024 and 2025. Vacancies dropped by 718,000 thereabouts. That's a huge blow for any employment market. And the unemployment rate rose to 4.7%. 4.7 to our Nigerian listeners, 4.7% unemployment rate will seem very like, oh, they're balling. But it's not. Think about it. When you have that's about 1.7 million people unemployed, that is a problem. Although it must be compared with the fact that employment rates remains very high. Now, how does that affect? It means that competition for vacancies, for jobs, is getting steeper, it's getting tougher, which means that that narrative of these migrants are coming to take our job will have more fertile soil to fall on. And that can be problematic. Um, um, Especially in sectors where immigrants are overrepresented, such as the health and care sector. That will be problematic. Um, and it's again, you have to ask questions. The first question is the UK's post-Brexit reliance on migrant labor. Has it now become a dependency trap? One. Secondly, with vacancies plummeting, will migrants end up bearing the brunt of this loser labor market? These are key questions.
And it's quite when you look at how again politics plays into everything, you see how sadly in trying to also on one hand deal with the political fallout of an increasing migrant labor workforce, but also uh, ensure that you fill those spaces. The government might be setting itself up to play right into the hands of of uh, of the opposition, because one way, whatever they do, they don't win, and this is what I mean. So by increasing uh, the threshold for which people can, or migrant workers can get sponsorship, and in so doing increase their length of stay in the UK, there's a risk that people are going to say, well, you know what, it's not worth it, and I'm going to leave, which temporarily, on one hand, will help the government to say, look, we've reduced migration. However, in doing that, and as more skilled workers then leave en masse, and seeing that it takes years to train up their replacements, you then have that uh, gap in between where you don't have enough skilled workers because, well, what's the use of investing so much time and energy and everything here if it's not going to lead to any route for settlement, and you don't have people who have been trained enough? Then there's that space in between where you don't have the workforce that's needed to plug the vacancies that are growing. And whichever way it is, if the migrants stay, you've let too many in. If they go, you don't have enough people to fix, which then leads to things like waiting lists increasing, and of course services not being able to be delivered as and when they should, and that is a problem, and which is why I have issues with the government, with politicians not being brave enough to come out and say, hang on, this is the reason why we need migrants in this country. These are the list of benefits that they bring in. And rather than try to demonize them, or rather than try to set traps for them so that they're not able to actually to reach any sort of potential, we should be having a conversation to say, what is a long-term plan? Right now, we do need them. This is what they're bringing. This is what we should do. This is how we can help them assimilate so that we can create the society that we're looking for, rather than just joining that bandwagon and saying, you know what, all of them are bad, all of them are not needed, because at the end of the day, whoever loses, it's not us.
So it's it's a very interesting thing, because what you have just described again is what I mentioned earlier, the dependency trap. So I'll again tell the story of the British Medical Association. In 2008, they rose to Gordon Brown's government, stating very clearly that if the government needed to cut down on the number of people being admitted into medicine, basically the number of doctors being trained in the UK every year, because too many doctors will devalue the profession. That was their reasoning. The government agreed with them, but then what it ended up doing was reducing the number of doctors in the UK, especially when, ironically, many British doctors began to emigrate for better opportunities. And that is the core thing that many of these people completely ignore. Human beings will move when there are better opportunities. This was true in the time of Christopher Columbus. This was true in the time of Ibn Battuta. This was true in the time of Julius Caesar. People will move when there are opportunities to make a better life for yourself. So a lot of British doctors, native-born British doctors, have moved over the past 15 years to Canada, to the United States, to Australia, and increasingly to the Middle East, because they will make a lot more money in those countries. What do these people who complain about people moving to the UK have to say about that? I mean, one of the great ironies is watching the Twitter account of somebody called Isabel Oakeshott complaining about migrants to the UK. But where is she tweeting from? The United Arab Emirates.
Or talk about Twitter. The most famous
It's X
twat of
nowadays.
X. Damn it! No, it doesn't help. What I was about to say, the most famous twat of them all. Who will be Elon Musk? Who, on one hand, a migrant himself, supporting the push for less migration, but also suddenly when he realized that if certain visas that helped his company were going to be cut, suddenly he helps him make less money, and sparked an infighting within MAGA. It's crazy how all this thing is. A lot of this rhetoric is for the politics, and a lot of people are either one, unwilling to be honest with the population, or brave enough. So there's a group of people who are unwilling. There are a group of people who are not brave enough to
Who are
say
too cowardly.
too cowardly.
And
Yes.
And then there's a third group that you ignore, which is the people who don't really have a problem with immigration, in all honesty. They have a problem with who is migrating.
True. And of course, to the last people who sadly are often not a part of this conversation, but around whom these conversations are centered, the migrants themselves. What I will say is keep doing what you're doing. Undeniably, you provide such a huge benefit to the UK, to the health sectors, the university sectors, to the care sector. I would say don't let anyone diminish your contribution. Keep your head up, and just keep on keeping on.
That's an MC Light song.
Anyway, so Cheta, shall we draw the curtain, and I'll see you at the next one.
Yes, we shall. See you at the next one.